Commission meeting to order. If you would stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome all of our citizens out tonight. Thank you for coming out on such a warm evening. All right, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
The only deletion that we have was publicized. The very first public hearing has been withdrawn by the applicant.
Very good. So if there's anyone here who was thinking that they were going to hear the public hearing on the cell tower, that's been withdrawn, so we will not be discussing that tonight, so just want to let you know that. Any other additions or deletions?
No, sir.
All right. Then announcements or reports?
Not tonight, no, sir.
Would like to welcome Councilman Holland as usual and Councilman King. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you being here, for sure. All right, item number 4, approval of the minutes. Commissioners, you've been given the minutes for our July 24th, 2023 meeting. Are there any changes, additions, corrections to those minute meetings? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept and approve those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes for the July 24th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it. Very good. We'll move on with our agenda. Item number 5, public hearing. Item PH-23-05, the annexation and rezoning for 52 acres located at the end of Stagecoach Road along Spear Road from unincorporated Fayette County AR zoning to Peachtree City ER and LUR zoning. What I'd like to do is just read the procedures for the public hearing, and then I'll open it so that all of those here in attendance for that can hear what the procedures will be. When the public hearing is open, members of the Planning Commission will become hearers. No action on their part is in order until the chair declares the hearing complete. The chair will allow each side equal opportunity to the floor. Individual members of the public will be given up to 5 minutes to state their case. First, the city staff will present the request and provide an assessment of compliance with the city code. Next, those who are supporting the issue will be heard, including the applicant. Then those opposing the issue will be heard. Prior to closing the public hearing portion of the meeting, city staff and the public will be given the opportunity to ask questions of either or both sides of the issue. When the chairperson is assured that input is complete, the public hearing will be ended and the Planning Commission may then debate the issue and render a decision. Now, all speakers are asked to follow these rules. Come to the microphone, state your name and neighborhood prior to making remarks. Please keep your remarks under 5 minutes and try, if you can, to not repeat others' comments. And please address all your comments to me as chair. With that, I will now open the public hearing.
Thank you. There we go. The lights are coming down a little bit so we can see this. This process is the annexation and rezoning that goes along with it in the city is a 2-step process. And so the first step was approved by City Council in May of this year. And what we are discussing tonight is the step 2 of that process. And boy, this looks so much better on my screen. I'm sorry for all the little fine print. There have been a lot of questions about the annexation process. And so I've done my best to try to distill it into a understandable graphic. What you have here basically is on the left is trying to explain the step 1 of the city process. And what we do, this is only done because of a city ordinance. And what we do, staff only looks at it for compatibility with comprehensive plan policies. It's almost like a kind of a 10,000 feet above look at it. Council makes a decision whether to allow the application to proceed or to deny. them the ability to proceed, and then they have 1 year to submit a Step 2 application. Now that Step 2 application shown here on the right in the blue, there are multiple laws and ordinances that have to be met simultaneously. And so that can feel or get a little bit confusing. And so I'm hoping to break it down here. Those steps listed on the right are, there are multiple ways in the state that you can ask to annex in. There's, if you're 100% of all property owners is one way, and that's if there's no registered voters on the property. There's a 60% method, which means if there are registered voters, then you have to get 60% of those registered voters to sign the petition. There's also a method for unincorporated islands. Those are those islands that are kind of stuck between cities. We had a few of those a couple of years ago. There's also a possibility of doing it through a referendum or through the General Assembly. Each one of those methods has a different process and a different set of rules and things that have to be met. And so listed here are the steps for the 100% method. That is what this application is looking for. All of this is very time regulated. It has to be done within 60 days unless it's objected to. But it can't be done within less than 30 days. So you got to find that, balance. And so all of those time limits are basically start as soon as council accepts an application in. Allows, maybe is another word to say it, allows the application to proceed. Then we have notified, we had 5 days to notify the county, which we did. They have then 5 days to respond to us with certain, if they've got facilities in the property, they need to let us know. They've got 15 days to request a meeting, and they have 30 days in order to, if they want to object, they have to do it within that 30 days. Now, within that 30-day wait period, the council, city council, cannot make a decision before that 30-day wait period is over. But we can have a public hearing held by the Planning Commission, which is exactly what we're doing tonight. And that's that yellow star kind of telling you what we're doing here. There's also a little arrow off to the side that says basically if the county objects, that pushes a pause button on this process and starts a whole nother arbitration process that is very regulated by time, 150 days. So hopefully we won't see that. And I say that because we have received some comments from the county as of the end of last week, and so it was after your report came out, so I'll go over those. But just a reminder of what the actual request is. So the property is located, so this pink line is the current city boundaries. We are located in what you call sort of the northwest corner of the city. There's the new Booth Middle School in the aerial, and so it is these properties right here that are asking to annex in. They're asking to develop into residential. So what you're now looking at is this is Stagecoach Road. There's the track of the middle school. Down here is Spear Road, and so there's that property outlined in blue again that they've asked to annex in. And a creek or a major tributary of Camp Creek runs through this property. And so the portion of the property shown in yellow, they're asking to zone estate residential, which has, they've shown 2 lots here, but could be up to 4 lots. They have a 3-acre minimum. So there's Stagecoach continuing in, and then they would cross over that creek into, now what they're asking for over here is a limited use residential for 21 lots. And you can sort of see them. They've got the numbers outlined or circled. There's a bit of green space here that they are showing. There's an access easement to some property maybe in the future, thinking through. And then they've got 1 lot that backs up to Spear Road, but does not, you don't see a road connection all the way through. And that was as a result of the conversation that they had during the Step 1 annexation. We got the impression that council would like to see them access the property through Stagecoach instead of Spear. The property is currently zoned AR in the county, which calls for 5-acre minimum. It's right next to R72 in the county, which calls for a 2-acre minimum. Then when you cross over the city line, you've got ER, schools and churches can be in any zoning district, and so they're in the ER zoning district. You have some LUR for the Hyde Park Phase 1. They have minimum lot size of 1.5 acre. And again, some more ER along Carriage Lane. The future land use maps for these areas. So just to reorient you, there's the middle school. So within the county, they have called for, there's Shiloh Mobile Homes, they have an environmental area they outline. For them, that just means that property owner needs to be aware that there may be environmental issues on that property. It doesn't mean that they can't develop it. And then rural residential for 3 acres lot size. And then right across into the city, you have single family low, which is our lowest zoning, or lowest future land use density designation. That's 1 acre or larger. Community services, single family medium, single family low, open space, etc. These are the comments from the county. They mentioned that there may be an opportunity to extend Stagecoach out towards Ebenezer. That's a long, I call it the 100-year vision of basically bringing Stagecoach Road back. And they also had the opinion that the annexation and subsequent development would not have an adverse impact on the county. So county board has not had any, they will hear this on their August 24th meeting. They have not made any official action, but the county staff has recommended that it has no impact and therefore to not object. So what we have to do in the step 2 process is staff is asked to look at the impact on community facilities, and that includes things like utilities, police, fire, as well as the comprehensive plan policies. And so water is available to the site. The water department mentioned, depending on the density, they may need to increase the size of the water pipe, but that would be at the cost of the developer. Through sewer, they are not proposing to connect to sewer. They would be doing individual septic lots, and it would have to be reviewed and approved by the county health department. The police and the fire chiefs were requested information on how this would impact their ability to continue providing high-quality services throughout the city, and they said that there would be no impact based on this request. We're going to spend a little bit of time, the impacts on the roads. What you see outlined in black there is what they've proposed. But if you do just a little bit of reorientation and curve that Stagecoach Road a little bit to the north, and then bring these subdivisions kind of like off of it, then without much impact to the lot yield, you get the possibility of connecting and continuing that Stagecoach Road if the adjacent properties ever develop in the future. Now that's where we have to, we're not saying it will, we're not supporting that it should, we're just saying that we would like to leave that option open if it ever happens. These roads are required by our ordinance to all be built per Peachtree City standards. As with the paths, they are showing a little bit of a path connection up here that would then connect into an existing path to the Hyde Park subdivision, and obviously the path that's now on Stagecoach serving the middle school. And that would also have to be built to Peachtree City standards. Now, natural resources. We have in the comp plan, it specifically says that the environmentally sensitive lands should be separated out from the parcels, subdivided separately, and dedicated either to the city, well, it says specifically the city. And that's because we are considered a nonprofit and can hold land like that for preservation. Now, right now, they're not showing that that is pulled out of the lots, and therefore it doesn't meet the comprehensive policy. The applicant did say in their staff, in their narrative, that they were considering and would be open to dedicating that land to a Southern Conservation Trust or whomever. And so questions about that, I think, may be appropriate to the applicant tonight. I did want to bring up that if we do end up through this discussion deciding that pulling the land out of the lots as a separate lot could have a pretty big impact on the lot size in this proposal. You see that green area is a very rough sketch of what that environmental area would look like, and you can see what's left. Some of those pink lots are quite a bit smaller. So we have a housing policy to provide housing that allows for aging in place, working from home, multifamily generational homes. Now, that's not something that we do necessarily through zoning, but in an LUR, we do have the ability to request certain conditions, and staff is asking if you all would consider the condition that the homes have ground level bedrooms and bathrooms. The whole reason is for this to try to satisfy that policy of allowing folks to, as they age, to be able to continue living in their home even if they don't want to go up and down stairs. Another condition that you'll see in all of the LUR zoning districts is low maintenance siding. And so that condition in the staff report includes brick, stone, and cementitious, like hardy plank siding. So staff does what we call a land use fiscal impact model every year. And I just wanted to talk about what the inputs are in this, because that affects the outputs and how we need to use this tool. This tool is not to be used to evaluate every development that comes through and tells you what the impacts are of that specific development. What this tool does is look at the city overall. What does it cost for us to provide services overall? And then figure out what property tax value we would need to recoup those costs. Obviously, this is an average, and so we're not saying that these numbers, every single house in this city actually costs this, but it's just a tool for us to kind of step back and use as sort of a benchmark. So it says here we take all of the acreage in the city, we categorize it by its land use, we know how many dwelling units are in the city of all types, and then we take the budget. And we figure out that the average cost of providing services to a single family, to a dwelling unit, so that's every kind of dwelling unit, is about $1,379 annually. If the city were to recoup that through property taxes alone, then we would be looking at about a $570,000 fair market value. That's sort of your break even. Another way to look at this, though, is land is a limited resource. And so if you look at it as a per acre cost, then what we actually end up is per residential acre, we need about a fair market value of $1.8 million in order to recoup the average cost of providing services, city services to that acre. And the reason those numbers are very different, why is one 570 and one 1.8 million, is it because most of our homes in Peachtree City are built on lots smaller than even half an acre. So we have about 0.4 is the average, 0.4 acres, the average lot size in the city. And so that's why, you can see how you take 2.25 of homes, and all of a sudden, now you're in the 1.8 million. We also just look at tax revenue. Again, this is just sort of a benchmarking tool. We looked at the fair market value of the Hyde Park, and we did a estimation of what it would impact the county if that property is no longer in the county, but it's actually in the city, because you can see, for example, if you're in a city, you don't pay for county fire or county EMS. But if you, what you do pay for is 911, everybody does. County still gets their money. The unincorporated county still gets their money, and then the city also does. And then, of course, the school always does. So this helps us, and it helps the county figure out, basically, these guys, by this becoming into the city, their fire department and EMS services lose that annual revenue. Of course, they're not providing services to that property, so you would think that it would kind of wash out. So, as a reminder to everybody here, the Planning Commission is a recommending board only. The City Council are the ones who actually make the final decision. And so any action the commission makes tonight is a recommendation. And staff has these recommended conditions if you all recommend approval. And that includes Stagecoach being built as a village collector with no lots fronting along it, that the environmentally sensitive lands be platted separately and deeded to either a nonprofit, an HOA, or the city, that a 50-foot landscape buffer on Spear Road be saved. This is what, if this land were in the city, that's what we would look for, that buffer. That the limited use residential development have a max of 21 lots with a minimum lot size of 1 acre. That's to meet that single family low future land use designation. The building setbacks would be compatible with those in the ER zoning district, so that's 50 in the front, 15 on the side, and 30 in the rear. And that there be low maintenance materials used for the siding of the house, including brick, stone, or cementitious siding, and that all of the elevations facing a public street should not be blank and utilize the same level of architectural detailing. That's the same condition we have in all the LUR zoning districts. I am happy to answer any questions. I know that there's a lot going on here. So I'm happy to entertain those.
Sure. Just a quick question. So what you've shown here, and you gave us 13 recommendations in our package. These make up the 13 recommendations?
Yes, these on the slide are my attempt to take that whole page of conditions and summarize it.
Okay. So let me just ask the commissioners, do you have questions to the staff report before we open it up to the public?
Yes, sir. I have a
Commissioner
couple.
Reeves, go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate the presentation. It was very helpful to me. First of all, one of the questions that I had was, what does the area look like with the environmental resources area mapped on top of it, the overlay? So that was very helpful. I appreciate that. If you could go back to the actual, that map. So one of the questions I also had is this 100% annexation method. I realize you explained it, but just help me one more time. The 100% annexation method, my understanding right now is that the property owner is to ask the other property owners within that area. Is that the case? Or what?
Yes, in this case, the property owner is the same entity for all three of them. There are different LLCs that own it, but behind that LLC is the same property owner.
Okay, so let me ask you this. The area at the bottom, I think it's R72, currently in Fayette County?
These right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That particular area right there, were they involved or be, okay.
No, they
Same-
are not within the requested area. If this proceeds and is approved, they will not be annexed into the city.
Okay. I imagine the same is true for Peachtree City side. Now, the people that live on Peachtree City side, as far as being asked about their involvement or in the 100% annexation method, their input was not, okay.
No, ma'am.
The other question I had, and then we'll just, I'll leave it there, is I know some of the resources you talked about was water, sewer, police, and fire. It appears that we're going from an area of a low density to one of a higher density, and I would imagine that would bring some traffic concerns, you know? When is the point that that is actually looked at, number one? And number two, will the planning commission have an opportunity to hear the results of whatever the traffic study results are?
The trigger for a traffic study is 100 peak trips per hour.
Okay.
That is going to be something along the lines of a major industrial development. So this was far below that threshold. And so there's nothing in the ordinance that we can use to require a traffic study. I'm sorry, when I say we, I mean staff
Okay.
can use to require a traffic study. What I can do, and I'm sorry, not ready for that tonight, but I can ask the city engineer to do like a trip generation memo, and they use standard trip generation data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers to figure out what the peak trip generation would be for this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the staff from commissioners? Commissioner Rick? Did you-
Okay. Yeah, question to staff, and I know this has probably been brought up in the past when we were looking at a different development on the corner of Carriage. With the signaling there, there was some discussion, I know, brought up in the past about the state coming in and doing some different signaling there, especially left turns off of Wall Banks as well as off of Carriage. And since the bulk of the people that would be coming out of this would take Carriage to be able to go ahead and make a left turn because you can't make a left on Stagecoach, has there been any additional discussions with the state and the city engineer
So
on?
they did something before school started. I have heard that it's working, but I haven't heard any follow-up, so I can follow up and get that information for you.
Yeah, and I think that's important to take a look at. I've been at the intersection there of 54 and Walt Banks, and on several occasions, I thought there was going to be literally a head-on collision between people coming across off of Carriage, going straight on the Walt Banks, and people not paying attention and trying to make a left onto 54 heading eastbound. So with some more homes back in there, as well as everything going on with the school, I think that's definitely something that we need to take a look at. And like I said, I know it was discussed at one point in time, and just didn't know where things were at with that, so,
Yes, sir.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hamlin?
So question, the land is right now in the unincorporated county part is agricultural residential, correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to describe a bit in terms of what can be used for that land
So it
as
would,
it's currently zoned?
I mean, 5-acre minimum lot, and it can be any kind of agricultural, timbering, production. So, you know, you could theoretically have some pretty intense agricultural uses there. But other than that, I'm not
Sure.
an expert on county zoning.
No, that's fair. Because, I mean, we've talked about agriculture within the city, and we've said, like, you know, as it's zoned right now within Peachtree City, if it were agriculture, they could do things like clear cut, correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
So they
Absolutely.
could clear cut this as well, if it were to remain as is.
Timbering, yeah, that's protected right in the state of Georgia.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Grace?
Yeah, just, it seems pretty clear that they could build homes through the county zoning currently, they have to make the lot sizes larger. But, could they, if the city does not approve annexation, could they extend Stagecoach Road without our approval to that neighborhood?
That would be up to the county to require that, and since that was a comment from the county staff, I wouldn't be surprised if that's something they would pursue. I don't want to speak for them, though.
It would not, I mean, not extend it to Ebenezer, but connect it to our city.
Oh, you mean, oh, I see.
Yeah.
So the Stagecoach right-of-way, we are in the process of getting dedicated from the school. There is a memorandum of understanding between the school board and the city, so that is happening. It has to happen. They are extending that right-of-way to the end of the school property. So if the county wants to build a road right there, there is nothing we can do to stop them.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so is the applicant here? Yes. Would you stand up and give us your name and who you represent? Before you do that, let me welcome Councilman Prebor. Phil, glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Lindsay, representing the applicant. The applicant is Hyde Park Properties 2, LLC. And I have Mike Hyde and Michael Hyde here prepared to answer any technical questions that the commission may have. And as Robin says, he always does such a great job, we're here tonight seeking a recommendation of approval for the step 2 annexation. As Robin stated, the total area is about 52 acres. There are 23 lots being sought, 2 of them being AR, average size 6.5 to 7.5 acres. And then the remaining 21 lots on the remaining 39 acres. And when I talked to Robin this morning about the environmentally sensitive area, my client has been in discussions with the Southern Conservation Trust about donating that property to them and deeding it to them. And if that occurs, if that's what Southern Conservation Trust wants to do, and I think they do, all the lots that are in the pink will still be larger than an acre each. These lots are big. While they look small, maybe on the wall there, they're actually very large. They're a couple acres. Some of them a couple acres each, and some of them, even after the green is taken out, will still be in excess of an acre in size. So the property to the west of the creek would be zoned ER if the annexation is approved. And as Robin stated, the property to the east of the creek would be LUR and subject to those conditions, those recommended conditions that Robin summarized for you here just a little while ago. The homes that would be built in this would become a part of the Hyde Park Homeowners Association, so they will be controlled by an HOA. As Robin stated, there is a multi-use path along the northern border of this property, and it will be built to city standards. The homes that will be built here will all be about $1 million each in sales price. The two are the area that's zoned ER may actually be very, very large homes. We'll have to see what the market comes to bear. But those in the pink, we believe, will look like many of the nice neighborhoods with the larger homes here in Peachtree City. Currently in Peachtree City, I don't believe there's any homes that are being built on lots of this size and of that price range. We also have had discussions with the school board or the school administration about continuing their project adventure over at Booth Middle School, and that, of course, will be dependent upon Southern Conservation Trust, so they want to continue doing that. But we've had discussions with them too to continue to let them use the wetland protected area. Robin's talking about the Stagecoach Road to the northern end of the property. Robin, will you put that
let's
slide
see.
up?
If I can get that there. There we
Thank
go.
you. This is a possibility, but it's not maybe as clear-cut as it's shown here. Right now, there is, I guess, a dirt road or whatever, old Stagecoach Road, that is shown. I mean, people in the audience probably can't see it, but it's just above the pink shaded area. It is not on our property. It's just north of our property, at least with the pink area. it comes into our property in the estate residential portion. So we don't control that, and our thought is, okay, while we certainly understand wanting to put Stagecoach Road in some type of desert area, kind of like what's shown on the map there, you're going to have parallel roads now with the old Stagecoach Road. So I guess the county will have to deal with that to try and get in. I believe the Davis family owns that property north of there. But I wanted to show that so that you understand the reason why we had shown, and Robin, if you'll go back, I think one slide prior to that. Yeah, that, can you do the dark so you can see? Yeah, the reason why we have presented like that is because, again, it comes straight off of the school. It seems to make sense for a residential subdivision. But again, we're amenable to talking about the alternate plan, but I wanted the Planning Commission to understand what we're looking at there. That you're going to have a road right next to, or a new road right next to an old road, and I guess the county could require maybe the old Stagecoach should come into that. But what we've done in anticipation of trying to figure out whatever the county might want to do, if you'll look, as this comes in the up and down road, that's Kensington Court, we've reserved a 50-foot road easement there to the top there on the northern part of the cul-de-sac, so that there would have the ability to bring access down into the subdivision, if that's what the county wanted to do and the city wanted to do. And then, Robin, if you'll go on down the darkened road all the way to the next cul-de-sac, we have right there, we have a 50-foot access there. Again, not saying that the property located to the east is going to develop, but for good planning purposes, to have the ability to have internal access, and so you're not having to go out on Spear or go around or whatever. We don't own the property to the east. We have nothing to do with it, just good planning to try and do that. And then if you look to the south, the road, or the lot 1, I think is at the very, very bottom, does not have access onto Spear. And I think that was one of the requests made to us by the city council. It would have a long driveway going across lot number 2, which would connect it to Stagecoach Road. So we have tried to address all of the comments and concerns expressed to us by the city council, and working with the planning staff and with the school board to get access so that we can build the bridge across the creek, build Stagecoach Road all the way. It would go onto the, I think it's 15 feet or 50 feet, whatever, that crosses over into the county's, the school board's property, so that Stagecoach Road now comes all the way into this property. Access is only by there. We had heard from the chief of police and from the fire chief that this would have no impact. They had said that even at the city council meeting, and they already provide, I think, services for all the property that's outside the county off of Spear Road from the mutual aid agreements between the city and the county. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
That will come a little later. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Lindsay, for sure. All right, so now we'll turn to public comment. Let me see a show of hands of individual community members who may be here in support of the application, who wants to speak. Is there anyone here in support of the application who desires to speak? Okay, that's fine. We'll move on. I'm going to make an assumption there are several of you here who are in opposition who would like to speak. Is that correct? Can I see a show of hands? All right, very good. All right, so maybe the easiest way of doing this is we'll start with the front row and then just move back. Again, please give us your name and the subdivision, and you have up to 5 minutes. Please, sir.
Good evening. First of all, I want to tell all of you, thank you for being on the Planning Commission. I read and I see it's a volunteer position, and I personally appreciate what you all do for Peachtree City. My name is Jim Forstall. I live in the Spooner Ridge Division. Been a resident of Peachtree City since 1992. I'm going to give you my bottom line up front. I'm against this annexation or any more annexations for 2 reasons. Number 1, traffic. I was on the most recent 5-year comprehensive plan committee, and the number 1 problem that was surfaced in what I hear from family, friends, neighbors, people outside of the city, is a continuation of traffic being a problem. And I don't see it doing anything but getting worse. Hopefully, it's gonna get better. I hear there are some initiatives to make it better, but, I think we need to wait to see if it really does get better before we do any more annexation, because I don't care what anybody says, annexation is gonna add to a traffic problem. I also think that this annexation could set the stage for more annexations on that side of town. So I would ask that you really seriously take traffic into consideration. The second thing is affordability. We've had to raise taxes. We've had to raise revenue collected of our residents because of affordability of providing services and maintenance of infrastructure. And that's I mean, we're getting a ton of money from Splosh, and we still cannot afford to do everything that needs to be done. We're having to prioritize things, so there's a lot of things that are not getting done. So for that reason, I would also ask that we stop any annexation, this one or any other, until we get our traffic and our finances in line to be able to do more annexing. And once again, thank you for your service. Thank you.
Anyone else on the front row would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Randy Huff. Got to Peachtree City in 1973, so I'm celebrating my 50th year here. Seen a lot of change. There were 4,000 people when I got here. There's now nearly 40. And I can certainly identify with the previous speaker in terms of the traffic changes in the area, but that's not my main point for speaking. I live at 289 Spear Road, so my property line is about 150 yards from the Camp Creek and the bridge that takes us over into unincorporated Fayette County. So I have a vested interest in this. Here's my main problem. We've suffered in the town, I think, when we deviated too widely from the original land use plan that was in place when I got here in 1973. And so now we're talking about annexing properties, in this case, a small amount of a lot of natural area that could be in the future annexed into Peachtree City, as far north as 54 or south down to 74, if we wanted to take that whole swatch, and there's some talk about doing that, and convert it into residential land and other uses. I'd like to see a plan. Where's the master plan for that sort of thing? When we piecemeal it, we run a big risk of doing something today and then we do something tomorrow, and we find these unintended consequences where things conflict. Oh, if we had only put the road here, we could have saved a lot of money and served in a better way to keep traffic under control. So that's always a problem. It's always been a problem. In my observations, no one ever anticipated when we started developing Peachtree City that right to immediately to our west in Coweta County, there were going to be hospital service facilities put in over there. They were going to grow to our east. We didn't have a hospital at that time, now we do, and a whole complex over there. So we have all this traffic coming back and forth, and no one anticipated that. We forgot to see what the second and third order consequences was of our developing large commercial real estate sections along Highway 54 to the west of Highway 74. And the same thing could happen here. I don't know what's going to go in that property. I see a logic to annexing that area as a kind of buffer zone. And there are some aspects of it that I find very interesting. I'm not opposed to land development. I'm a capitalist. I was in the financial service industry for 40 years. I'm all about free markets, but smart planning in the free market, let's call it, of development of this land, is essential, or we'll all sit here 10 years from now and say, we shouldn't have done it a piece at a time, or if we did, we should have a master plan to see that the piece we're working on today fits with the master plan. Also have a problem that I thought I'd never stand up and argue for, but I've noticed with the taking of the land for Booth Middle School, and I'm on the Board of Education, so maybe I shouldn't talk with my board since I'm talking about myself as a citizen. But here's what I noticed. For years in my lot, I've got 3.4 acres on Spear, you rarely saw a buck during the day. You never saw a turkey, you never saw a fox. Now all of a sudden we have 30 or 40 turkeys running through the yard frequently. We see bucks all the time. And when you start to take the habitat, we're losing something that we all love. To see these animals, I do, walking around, but they were going to run out of a place to live and feed themselves and what have you. So for those two reasons, I have more. I'll quit with that.
Thank you. All right. Move on to the second row. Is there anyone here who's speaking in opposition on the second row?
Yes, sir. I'm Larry Manwaring, and I live on 307 Stagecoach Road. I live right across from the school, and we've seen a lot of changes since we've been here. My wife and I came to Peachtree City in 1976. We came for two reasons. First, quality schools, and second, good zoning. Now, the quality schools we got, both of our daughters received a quality education, as did Mr. Hamner here in the county. And we're proud of that. We feel that they've really upheld us well. However, when it comes to the zoning, they did well for the first number of years. And lately, it hasn't been upheld. We've been disappointed. We hoped that when we came here, that our homes would be secure with the zoning plan. 1990, I had a friend offer to sell me property that's across from the school now, 10 acres. And we went out and looked at it. My wife and I are both from the rural areas, and we felt so comfortable. We felt at peace, and it was quiet. And one of the nice things about Peachtree City is they had small homes and apartments, and then little larger lots, and then big lots in the estate residential. And I thought, here's the place that we could really feel comfortable. Even if interest rates at that time were 14%, we went ahead and bought the house. We bit the bullet and paid the price. We saved our pennies, and we took good care of that home. And we value it. This is an investment for some people, but for us, it's personal. I've planted trees lovingly in different places in the property. I have a live oak that I'm very proud of that I'd be glad to share with you. There are things that I can never replace. People say, well, sell out, Larry. You got 10 acres down there. Well, I'm too old. I can't start over again and plant another tree. We felt that we were secure up until recently. Lately, they've been, well, first the Methodist Church came. And we thought, well, it's a church. And some of the leaders in the church said, don't worry, Mr. Manwaring. If we sell property back there, we'll see to it that it follows estate residential. You see, all of that property around us was ER. And we felt secure in buying that land. And when they said that, I thought, well, okay. But the problem was, those leaders in the church left, and when the new ones came in, they sold the property to the school board, And the school board went ahead over to Carriage Lane and bought a house and then tore it down and slammed in a road from Carriage Lane over to Stagecoach, tore out all of our trees down Stagecoach Road, and plopped a 1,200 student facility right across the road from us. So everything seemed like was lost, but we're learning to make the best of the school. We've even taken vegetables. I have a big vegetable garden to the people in the school and tried to do our part as good citizens. But now we've got a development that they want to put in at the end of our road with smaller houses, smaller property, and they can call it what they want. You can look at it, and it is much smaller. And the other question and the real concern that I have is this will be just a step. They left those corridors there, or whatever they call them, at the end of the cul-de-sacs, so they could keep on going. Well, everybody knows there's a big chunk of land on the other side of that, the Davis property's there. And now tonight I heard that they were talking about, hey, we can put Davis Road right on slap dab through there. So I'll tell you, if you decide to recommend this, you're going to have to decide too, what am I going to do about all that Davis property? And where are those people going to, if you annex those, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? And here I am, this stage of my life, with the 10 years, 10 acres rather, and I'm not sure. I'd like to live here for the rest of my life, and I urge you to vote against this. Vote against it because it violates the master plan that Peachtree City had, and it violates the good faith to its citizens. Now, thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else on the second row? All right, let's move to the third row then. Is there anyone in opposition who wants to speak in the third row? Come on up, please.
Good evening. I'm Brad Williams. I live at 104 Carriage Lane. And I have 2 points I'd like to make regarding this proposal. One, I don't really have a problem with the density. Don't really have a problem with 23 homes. In the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really make a difference. What I do have a problem with is the continuation of building and letting the infrastructure follow. We seem to have a habit of that here in Peachtree City, where we expand and we expand and we expand, and then the infrastructure has to catch up. Scott, the point that you made about crossing that intersection is something I live through every day. My wife and I cross that intersection frequently, going to our gym, going to visit my brother-in-law who lives in front of McIntosh, going for a run, going for a walk. And I can tell you, about 1 every 10 times I cross that intersection, I'm almost head on to someone who doesn't respect the fact that I'm going straight and they're making a left. We have handicap access ramps on all 4 sides of that intersection of Walt Banks and 54. They lead to nowhere. Because when that expansion of Sprouts was made, no respect was given to sidewalks or walking access. They literally go to grass. So if you want to cross there and you have your carriage with your little dog or your little child in it, I have a little dog, I do walk her in the stroller. I have to go on the road. I can't cross there. There's no infrastructure is my point. There's no infrastructure for cart access on Carriage Lane to speak of. We now have students, rising 8th graders, who are going to 9th grade practices of sports teams, who are walking up and down Stagecoach every evening, every afternoon. There is no right-of-way on Stagecoach. It's a very narrow lane if you've ever been up and down it. And I do believe that a significant amount of traffic will spill over onto Stagecoach, onto Carriage Lane for easier access in and out of the area if this were to go through. 23 homes is not a big deal. We already have hundreds of students being let off and picked up every day in that school, in that area. The paving of Stagecoach has been a huge lift and burden from us on Carriage Lane. It's greatly appreciated. We're grateful that that has finally happened. But I'm telling you, it was miserable last year. And it's going to be a continued bottleneck. My final point is the Pandora's box that this opens up. What's next? What's beyond this? It's not congruent with the master village plan of Peachtree City. And I'm here to voice my opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Linda Ellis. I live at Crescent Oak subdivision. We don't need to annex. I'm totally against annexing. But anyways, if you make this big mistake and vote to approve this, then there are a few things you really need to include as mandatory conditions. Forbid him for clear cut. I love trees. I'm a tree lover. So forbid him to clear cutting the land, especially anywhere within 50 feet of the designated floodplain and watershed area. Mandate that he cannot turn a blade of soil in the protected area. And you really must insist that he connect to Peachtree City water supply and sewer system. If you allow him to put in separate septic systems for each lot, then you're agreeing for future contamination of Camp Creek. That is not acceptable. Peachtree City has a commitment to preserving green belts and the environment. Don't let him pollute. Speaking of green belts, why isn't there a mandatory green belt around this entire development? There should be an undisturbed buffer zone around the entire development. The driveway that runs along the property line with Booth Middle School should be moved off the property line so that there is an undisturbed green belt there. And there should be an undisturbed 50-foot green belt adjacent to all the streets for future golf cart paths. If he's so determined to be insist in Peachtree City, then make him give up the land and all the necessary easements to the city for the proper golf carts path. He should have to follow all the guidelines. He's going to have to build 2 bridges. Who will establish the mandatory guidelines for those bridges? You need to make sure they don't interfere with the floodplain and natural drainage. But to tell you the truth, if you want to do what is right, you will deny this request because we don't have any requirement to annex this land. Let him build his development under county ordinances and zoning. When I saw this plan, I thought, oh my God, what a, should I say, rat trap or fire trap? And we are talking about kids. If there's an emergency at the school, what are we going to do? Don't annex. Think about it. Go up there and look at everything. Thank you.
My name is Suzanne Brand, and I live in Crescent Oak also. Let's be honest. The applicant may live in Peachtree City, but this is the request of a developer. It deals with his investment property, not his home. So please, Mr. Hyde, don't take this personally. It's just business. He can make a lot more money if you annex this property and allow him to build 23 houses instead of 14 under Fayette County zoning regulations. We need to remember that. He needs the annexation. We don't need it. Let's also cover that there is no legal basis for anyone to claim that a property owner is entitled to maximize his investment because no such law exists. A property owner does have the legal right to use his land as it is zoned when he purchases it. He purchased land in Greater Fayette County that allows him to build 14 homes on lots that are a minimum of 3 acres. Plus, he's dealing with the Camp Creek watershed and floodplain. He has the right to submit his building permit request to Fayette County right now, and he should do that. That is exactly what he should do. Oh, he has the right to apply for this annexation into Peachtree City, but guess what? Peachtree City is not legally obligated to approve it. We have the right to deny annexation. In fact, the current annexation plan, the written plan, which came out in 2014, does not include any recommendation to annex this property or any other property even remotely close to it. The agenda packet clearly outlines the financial benefit the developer will enjoy by getting the land annexed. Building 23 homes on smaller lots will be far more profitable than just 14 homes on 3-acre lots. At $100,000 of profit per home, he stands to make an extra $1 million if he convinces you to annex this land. Don't fall for it. The packet indicates the city would eventually get about $55,000 a year in property taxes if he builds 23 houses. But residential property generates less in taxes than it costs for its services in perpetuity. That increases the tax burden for current and future property owners because we do not have enough industrial and commercial tax revenue to offset that extra tax burden. We will all have to pay. The more houses you build, the more push to raise taxes because we lack industrial revenue. This annexation benefits the developer but not Peachtree City or its residents. So let's look at other concerns and why it's bad for Peachtree City. The plan submitted has two 50-foot wide street easements. One is between lots 11 and 12 and the other between lots 2 and 3. He's building roads to the parcel to the east and also to the parcel to the north. Why would a developer set aside buildable acreage for road easements leading to land he does not currently own? Answer, he wouldn't, unless he has an option to buy those 2 parcels and the other 3rd parcel that connects down to Spear Road. They're all owned by Noreen Davis. Those 3 parcels, one is 5 acres, one is 73 acres, and the other is 110 acres. That's 187 acres of adjoining property. If he's building a road easement to access them, you might want to ask him what he plans to do with those 187 acres if he has an option to buy them. Does he have an option? I'd ask him. And is he planning to develop them and ask for future annexations? That's something you all need to know. He's not going to admit having an option to buy them unless you ask him. But both the Planning Commission, City Council, and every citizen in this room and all the ones at home all need to know. His narrative refers to working on this for the past 28 years. This is not a one-and-done annexation development, nor will it be the last time he applies for annexation. Another issue, the first submission to council had access to the development from Spear Road, with only a golf cart bridge across Camp Creek to connect to Stagecoach Road. The criticism of that plan was that fire and rescue vehicles would have to go outside the city to go inside the development in order to provide services there because they were not going to be able to go from Stagecoach Road. Why not have roads going to both places? Well, that's disappeared. Now we're only seeing Stagecoach. Criticism of the need to go outside Peachtree City caused him to change his plan. They'll need to build a bridge across Camp Creek to access the development. The narrative says that they plan to build a covered bridge. While that's quaint, I question whether that would impede fire rescue vehicles. Do we really need more traffic on either Stagecoach Road or Carriage Lane? Because it lacks connection to Spear Road, so all traffic would have to use Stagecoach or Carriage. Is that being done to prevent car and bus traffic from cutting through to get to Booth? Booth needs an alternate road for traffic to come and go, so why not connect to Spear Road and allow access? That would also give an alternate exit for residents that don't require an interaction with traffic coming and going onto 54. Although I oppose this annexation vehemently, you might want to require a lot more conditions in the event that you make what I would say is a bad decision to approve it. The condition of access to Spear Road would be beneficial to Booth Middle School in case of a police, fire, or an EMS emergency, or God help us if the school is locked down. The dead-end location is not advisable from a security perspective. I'm retired law enforcement. Connection to both Stagecoach and Spear is necessary if you go through with it, and I hope you don't. So let's review your options. You could simply deny this application and you don't even need to state a reason, although there are plenty of reasons to state. You can deny it because the tax revenue will not support the maintenance in perpetuity, and we need industrial growth, not residential. You deny it because it appears his plans are to purchase properties to the north, to the east, and to the southeast, with a potential of 187 more acres in addition to the 52 he's currently proposed. He wouldn't build a road to those areas unless he planned to develop them. Trust me, he wouldn't. The minimum lot size really should be 3 acres. That's what you should hold to. You should make him give up all the environmental land to the Conservancy or the city and still have 3 acres. That's the same size that Fayette County would require for him to have. The road through the development must connect to both Stagecoach and Spear. That would make the road through the development a minor arterial, which would require a design change for the lot design because no driveway could be entering onto the arterial. And a 50-foot non-disturb buffer should be bordering all of the streets, and a multi-use path easement should be drawn and deeded to the city. Keep in mind that when they allowed residential construction along the road through Plantera, they did not think to the future about changes in traffic patterns. And yet we've seen all the changes in the last 30 years. With a school at one end of this development, you have many issues to consider. But remember, you're not obligated to recommend approval of an annexation. And I hope you don't. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on that third row who wants to speak?
Hello, my name is Ronnie Raines. I live at 109 Carriage Lane. I bought in September of '95, dead-end cul-de-sac. There was 31 acres undeveloped in Peachtree City. And then this picture, something similar to this, where they were going to put 24 homes, and it's an ER. To summarize it, it came out to where they built the property, but with 9 homes instead of 24 homes. It took 4 years. And the lots are bigger now than what they were proposed. So I don't know what's going to happen with this. I just wanted to say I object to it, and I hope you do not approve this action for this building. Thank you.
Very good.
Hi, I'm Pam Howland. I live at Lakeside Drive, across the lake. When I look at the road that's going in front of Stagecoach, that's the Stagecoach Road, that will have so much traffic on it, and that's where the kids are. You know, kids are out, and you're going to have so much traffic going back to that subdivision back there. I think you're just asking for trouble putting that many houses back there where there's going to be that traffic. And number one, you just built a new beautiful road there, and now you're going to have big trucks going over that road, going back there, taking all of the stuff you have to do to prepare and build all those houses. It's going to ruin that road. Now that's another thing that we, Peachtree City residents, have to pay for. Because isn't that our road now? Now that they've built it, now we have to take care of it, I think. But I just think that everybody talked about traffic, and I think you're really asking for trouble putting any more houses back there. I mean, look at Plantera. They were talking about Plantera and how bad it is there. They didn't think about the traffic. We need to learn from their mistakes and not do it on that road, because I think it's really going to cause a problem. Thank you. Appreciate what you guys do.
Is there anyone else? Yes, please, sir. Come on up.
Thank you. I'm Steve Vallis, 305 Robinson Road. And I wanted to say that, first off, I'm a short timer here, so I don't really have so much standing. We just moved out from California about 8-9 months ago. Before you all go running out to key my car and to, don't worry, we're okay. You have a beautiful city here, gorgeous. Well, we'll adjust for that. I don't do a lot of this, just saying. This starts screaming or something. You have a beautiful city here. Coming from California, you want to see development go sideways, there's your case study. We've come here. It is beautiful. It is peaceful. Yes, we understand the problems with the road up here and the traffic. I'm not saying a city shouldn't grow, but please be careful, and I agree with the plans, with the idea that the master plan must be reviewed. There should be something, okay? Other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say, and you've got a gorgeous city. Take care of it.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Nick Roth, and I live on the vaunted Stagecoach Road. Everyone did such a great job, stole all my points, so I don't really have a whole lot to add other than just to voice my opinion as someone who lives on that street and sees that traffic every day. And I think we do have to keep in mind what comes after this, that I don't think it's about these 21 lots. I think it's about the next 187 acres. And that's not going to show up in a traffic study, because they're going to run it on 21, because all of that's hypothetical. But these are business people. I'm a business person, and that's what you would do. And so I just appreciate you guys earnestly considering that, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak tonight.
All right, has everyone had a chance to speak? Very good. I'm going to close. Oh, okay.
I'm Linda Manwaring, and the only thing that I would like to do is to invite you to come at the dismissal of Booth Middle School, where 320 cars go in and come out. I would like for you to come and visit.
Thank you. All right, I'm now going to close the public hearing, and it will be now time for questions and comments from commissioners. So, Mr. Lindsay, if you will, I'm sure there'll be questions from the commissioners for you. Let's start with Commissioner Chris. You have questions for the developer, the applicant?
Yes. Hello, thanks for being here today. Staff has recommended separately platting environmentally sensitive lands. This will reduce the available acreage for residential lots. Do you find this condition agreeable?
That's fine.
Okay. The submitted applicant narrative states that a tentative agreement with the Southern Conservative Trust to dedicate the creek and the floodplain areas for conservation. Can you please elaborate on such agreement and what would what that agreement would consist of, and when you would intend to sign such an agreement?
Of course, I don't know when yet. Of course, it would depend on all of this, right? But we've had conversations with Southern Conservation Trust about deeding the property to them. The Southern Conservation Trust, at least I think the director, or maybe the interim director, has expressed interest in that, wants it to happen. The prior director, we had discussions with her, wanted this to occur. The board will have to vote on it, but it's our intent that if Southern Conservation Trust wants the property, we will dedicate the protected property to them. So it comes out of these lots.
And have they indicated what they would do with the property?
Well, they're a conservation group, and so they're going to protect it. You know, I don't want to speak for them, but I actually, I think, helped create Southern Conservation Trust about 25 years ago. And I know then when they owned the property, or I think they managed the property where we have the nature area, whatever, here in Peachtree City. It's all about conservation and education and trying to make sure the next generation has the benefits of seeing natural properties like we get to see today. So I assume that's what they're still doing, but I haven't been involved with them for about 25 years.
Does your employer have any interest in expanding either north, south, east, or west?
No. That property belongs to the Davis family. We have no connection, we have no options, nothing. Again, we're not building roads to that property, we're just leaving it there, and that's up to the city. If they come up and they want to be annexed in, you know, just like what we're doing, they'll have to apply and have to prove that it's a benefit to the city as opposed to a burden, et cetera. This is just for good planning, leave it there, and then if nothing ever happens, then it's 50 feet of green space.
I just have one more question for staff. Robin, you had indicated that there was a council objection to connecting to Spear Road. Can you summarize that objection for us?
I'm going to do my best. What I remember is that the concern was that public safety would basically have to leave the city and then to come back into the city to serve this area if the connection was through Spear Road and not Stagecoach.
So there was no objection to two connections, just
No.
a single objection, or objection to a single access point through Spear?
Correct.
Okay.
There was some discussion, and I think it's probably best for the applicant to clarify this, about a restriction, they have a deed restriction, that they cannot make that connection between Stagecoach and Spear.
Got it. And last question for you, Robin. The road that abuts the school property there, are there any city ordinances that talk about a buffer on the school side of that road?
There's no transitional yard buffer between these uses. That's only applies to commercial and office, but that doesn't mean it can't be a condition.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Commissioner Hamner,
No questions.
Commissioner Ridnow.
And I don't know if this is a question to the applicant or to staff, reason behind not tying into sewer, or, yeah, tying into sewer. I mean, I'm on septic in my neighborhood, and sewer's not offered. I would expect there would be sewer in that area.
Yeah, there's not a connection close enough here. It's not within 200 feet. It's on the, I think the last part of the sewer is to the west or north of this property, but it's on the school's property,
Right.
not ours.
So it is available, just not readily available, to say.
Right, we'd have, yeah, we again, the school board would control that, not us.
It's private sewer.
It's
It's a
private sewer
private
at that
force
point?
main.
Okay.
School sewer is private.
Yes, sir.
And I guess this is a question back to staff, and I know it was asked, but just to get a bit more clarification on it. Is the county able to tie in, let's say they would want to go ahead and take Stagecoach from Ebenezer to Stagecoach and start from Ebenezer back? Can they tie into a Peachtree city street from a county standpoint without anything happening there?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that was.
they can connect to a public, it's a publicly owned. We
Okay.
are all residents of Fayette County.
Right.
So.
I didn't know if there was any limitations or anything that has to go through to have that happen or not. So-
Only way they wouldn't be able to do it is if that right-of-way didn't come to their property.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But even then, they could condemn it.
And that, I mean, that is always an option with governments, but keep in mind, condemnation actually means just purchasing it through the court system.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Question to the applicant, you mentioned about $1 million homes. These are on up to, or of course, the two estate lots are 7+ acres. The other ones are gonna be somewhere around 3 or less. What size homes are we looking at? Are we talking 5,000 square feet? Are we talking, what's kind of your thinking of that?
4,000 to 5,000
4 to
square
5?
feet.
Okay. Is there anything else? I think that's everything.
Okay. Robin, let me ask you a question. In the applicant's, and I'm going to ask you because the applicant in his narrative indicated on our packages, page 15, he was indicating that the Fayette County unincorporated land use plan was incorrectly shows the west coast boundary. And my question is, have Peachtree City, has we addressed, he says this is
Okay.
incorrect. Have we
So-
addressed that with them?
Well, the county provided us with comments. And so the environmental, so I'm not sure if you're talking about the environmental or the rural residential 3. The county has confirmed it's rural residential 3. So 3-acre lot minimum, not the 2 acres. It used to be the previous future land use for the county 5+ years ago was 2-acre lots minimum. They increased it in their last update to 3-acre. And then the information I was given about the environmental mapping is a very broad stroke mapping that they use based on federal level mapping. And so they know that it's not accurate, that when development happens, on the ground surveys will have to occur.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Mr. Lindsay, you said that, I think you addressed this, but in your package, it indicates that you were open to dedicating the land to a conservative trust, and I questioned that term open. I think you may have addressed it, but where are you with actually, dedicating?
Well, again, Southern Conservation Trust Board has to vote and approve the acquisition, right? So I can't speak for them, but we're open to, if they are, about transferring the property. If not, one of the conditions I think Robin put on there was that the property would be, I guess, owned by the homeowners association. That's a possibility, or to the city. That's another possibility. But we want to protect that land, and if the city's requirement is take it out of the lots, well, okay, that's fine. I think the most logical choice would be somebody or something like Southern Conservation Trust, but again, they have to vote for it.
Do you have any feedback about which?
I would assume they would accept it, but again, I don't want to speak for another entity.
I just wondered if you got feedback that they were positively thinking.
Well,
about it positively.
the interim director, if that's the proper title for the person we've been talking to, is very positive about it. But again, it's the board's decision, not his.
Sure. All right, let me move down to Commissioner Johnson. Any questions?
So I just have kind of one big picture question for you. So, what's the main objective in pursuing this annexation instead of just sticking with the Fayette County current zoning?
Well, the client has developed the Hyde Park just to the northwest of this. This property was purchased over like a 28 or 30-year period, and the thought that they've always had was all this would all be part of the one development we're talking about, the homeowners association. So this was always the plan in the Hyde family, and then the request for it to be annexed. They've been here before, annexed. They've talked to the county about developing, and again, looking at both sides. Okay, what makes the most sense? Peachtree City obviously has great amenities. Even those who live on the other side of Red Wine Road who don't live in Peachtree City claim it as their home. I mean, Peachtree City is a great place, as we've heard from several of the folks. And so they like to include it, have them, these property owners pay the taxes for the city, because they're going to get the services here. Police and fire are going to service this and going to take care of it, whether it's in the county and we get no taxes for it, or if it's in the city. So for us, it makes sense to have it in the city and have it to city standards.
Okay, thank you so much.
Commissioner Reeves.
Yes, thank you. My question is for staff. I've heard the term master plan. I know we have a comprehensive plan currently. I think when I was doing some research way back in the day, we had a master plan. What is the difference, if you could explain that to me, and between a master plan and a comprehensive plan?
So there really isn't a difference. The master plan term was used in the 70s and 80s before the state adopted a law requiring what they called a comprehensive plan. And so we, to be compliant with the state law, have started calling our master plan the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the annexation plan that we have dating back to 2014, do we have any plans of updating our annexation plan?
We have it for council to consider in the next 5 years whether they want to undertake that project. At this point, they have not budgeted for that.
Okay, and the last question I had was, we talked about rural resident 3 acres, correct? And one of the recommendations is a minimum lot size of 1 acre. And I'm wondering, how did we go from
Why did
3
we get
to
there?
1,
Sure.
or not just 2?
Well, so in the state of Georgia, we cities cannot, are not allowed to plan for anything outside of our jurisdiction. Other states, they have what's called extra jurisdictional plans that a city can do, but we can't. And so what we're left doing is when we get an annexation, that means that we don't have a future land use plan for that property because it's outside of the city. The best we can do is take the categories that we have and see which one applies. And the lowest density category we have in the city is 1 acre or larger lots. That's single family low. But we have multiple zoning districts that meet that, so it has to be a minimum of 1 acre. Anything over that is icing on the cake, maybe a good way to say it. The 1985 plan had a policy of stepping down in densities as you got to the edges. And so we used to kind of say, well, as long as this one's a little bit lower density than the one just next to it, then it was kind of meeting that. That's another way to look at it. That's why I mentioned the Hyde Park. The smallest lot there is 1.5 acre. So it's kind of a, but from our staff point of view, we're kind of stuck with the plan for what's within the city limits, and that's where we came up with that minimum 1 acre lot recommendation.
And I think my last question concerns the term of creating an island. You tell me, but lot 1 and lot 2, is that not creating some sort of island? Tell me what an island is.
An unincorporated island is a piece of unincorporated county that is completely surrounded by a city. So that the only way the county could possibly get to service that area is to go through the city. And so that's what an unincorporated island, we're not creating one here.
Thank you.
All right, now we will turn to comments from the commissioners. And again, I'll start it to my far right with Commissioner Crizzy. Any comments?
Sure. As we all know, I think there's an obvious demand for housing here in Peachtree City. I definitely agree with the stated concerns about traffic. As we heard from staff, the property owner could build these homes with the Fayette County restrictions that are currently in place and connect to Stagecoach Road without our annexation. I'm not a voting member of this commission, but if the rest of the commission leans towards recommending annexation, I would request that, all the staff conditions be accepted in that recommendation and to align with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. I think that the minimum lot size should be increased to 1.5 or more acres. I also think we should require that the floodplain land be deeded to the stated conservation trust or the city. I also think that there should be a buffer between the road that comes down next to the school and that cul-de-sac there. And also that we should recommend that they consider a connection to Spear Road. But once again, as a non-voting member of this commission, I understand the need for housing. I think we do need to consider the character of the surrounding neighborhood if we do recommend annexation to the council.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamner.
Sure. We've talked a lot about plans tonight, and in 2014 there was a plan for annexation, and this was not part of it. So that's all I have to say.
Commissioner Rittenhouse.
Sure. I think one of the things that, and I think Commissioner Chris brought it up, is that, there is certain needs that we have. I would say that I'm not opposed to annexation, but it has to be carefully planned and thought out. Growth in certain ways is good, but it needs to be thought and controlled. And I've lived in other areas where gentlemen come up and basically said, the building happens and then the infrastructure follows. I've been in numerous cities, somewhat similar to Peachtree City, where exactly that has happened every single time. You typically don't build roads to the middle of nowhere and then grow around them. You typically, as we see a lot of times, the growth happens and then everything catches up. And unfortunately, it never seems to catch up. But that's beside the point. Concern I have with some of this, the location of the school is what it is at this point in time. Can't do anything about it. but the in and out, just from the school standpoint, to me causes a lot of headache and a lot of heartache. You know, it is very limited that you basically have really one way in and one way out where you can truly access both directions, and that's out of Carriage Lane. You know, I would have hoped at some point in time, and that's one of the questions why I asked the staff, that as part of building the middle school, there would have been some agreement, firm agreement with the state to actually do some signaling there that should have happened before even, quite frankly, that school opened, and it never did. And now we're catching up with that also. I like the idea of tying in to Spear. I heard that there's a deed restriction. I would hope that there's a way to work around that if this would go forward, that there could possibly be a tie-in, and that would not limit the city from going outside the city limits into the county and back in again. It would just be a secondary entrance and exit that would help alleviate some of those issues with the traffic. It would be nice to see, you know, that land, if this would go forward, deeded over to whether the city or the Southern Conservation Trust. I would love to see the sewer tie-in, but again, from what staff said, that is a private sewer now ending at basically the school, and that's unfortunate that that's the case, but again, it is what it is. And I think another thing to keep into consideration is, you know, the county can do what it wants to with the land, or the owner can do what it wants to do with the land on the county side. So really, there's no stopping a developer from putting homes in, whether or not this annexation goes forward or not. It just would fall under the county regulations, and there's nothing stopping the county tying into the Stagecoach and that traffic coming there through that section also. You know, looking at the city annexing it, we would hope that we would be able to put our rules and regulations and our ordinances in place to hopefully limit even more with conditions and things like that, some of the negative impacts that could happen if that property would get annexed. So definitely think there's some issues that's related to this that I definitely have some concern with. But you know, we'll see what happens as we go forward, and whether or not some of those conditions and some of those issues are able to be rectified.
Thank you, Commissioner Rittenhour. I actually have many of the same, or some of the same concerns. I'm also not against expansion, but I do have a couple of concerns. One, which has already been articulated, the traffic, the one way in and one way out, the possibility of this kind of looking like Plantera. You know, we need to have that connection to Spear Road. And I think the other issue for me is the, and again, it was articulated by one of my fellow commissioners, is expansion without the infrastructure. And I think that has the potential to fall back on, or come back on, citizens of Peachtree City if we're not careful. And what I mean by that is that, you know, while it looks like that city services can be serviced on this project alone, you know, I'm not so sure that if there's any other expansion that might create a burden on those city services, which ultimately then ends up being potentially increased taxes on the citizens, because now we need more fire and police and water to you know, to maintain, you know, that kind of situation. So I'm always concerned about expansion without the infrastructure being in place. So that's a concern of mine as well. Again, the topic of expansion doesn't bother me as much, because I think there needs to be housing options in Peachtree City for everyone, whether you buy a $300,000 house or $1 million house. I think we need to have options available to us, but it needs to be thought out, it needs to be planned, and it needs to make sure that it doesn't impact traffic and infrastructure like I'm talking about here. So those are my comments, and I'll move on now to Commissioner Johnston.
So thank you to the public, thank you to the applicant for being here. So yes, a little bit of everything that they said. I agree, growth is inevitable. I mean, growth is a good thing. Change is hard to accept, I know, for all of us. We can't assume things are gonna stay exactly the way they were when we all moved here. I've been here 20-some years now already, can't believe it. But However, I do believe, I'll have to quote the founder of the company I work for, who said, "No goal is too high if we climb with care and confidence." And so I think we need to feel confident in what's happening. And my biggest issue with this also is the traffic. Like, I just think Peachtree City as a whole has a traffic issue. I don't even like to go shopping hardly anymore. It's terrible. So I think we need to fix some things before we continue more growth. Like, let's fix what's not working right and then consider growing some more. So that would be my recommendation.
And Commissioner Reeves.
Thank you, sir. There is not much more to add than that. I think we've hit all the major points. The only two things that I would say is that, yes, I am definitely in favor of housing options in Peachtree City, but I'm more in favor of a plan. I think the reason we have comprehensive plans, annexation plans, traffic studies, and those sort of things is because we need to plan how we grow. And when you see roads that lead to nowhere, it's an indication that eventually it might lead somewhere. And I recognize it doesn't quite meet the threshold for actually doing a traffic study. However, I'm of the opinion that we might want to consider whether or not we need to change some of those requirements as to what does meet a threshold and what does not. Thank you.
Okay. So as the audience who was here, as you can hear, there's a lot of mixed feelings and emotions about the issue. Please just remember that our vote that we're about to take is just a recommendation that goes to City Council. City Council will make the final determination. Please just keep that in mind. So, Commissioners, the chair at this point will entertain a motion on item PH-23-05, the annexation and rezoning for 52 acres located at the end of Stagecoach Road and along Spear Road from unincorporated Fayette County AR zoning to Peachtree City ER and LUR zoning. Is there such a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move that we deny the application for PH 2305 annexation of 52 acres, Stagecoach and Spear Road, as presented.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Then, by show of hands, all in favor signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
And there are no opposers, so the motion is denied 4-0. I'm sorry, 5-0, pardon me. 5-0. All right, thank you again for showing up tonight. You can stay if you want. We have some other items on our agenda to take care of. So we will move on. There's no old agenda items, so we'll move on to item number 7. Well, let me let folks clear up for a second.
Thank you.
I know that there's a story. It was before I came here, but I know that there is some history there, and so I will look that up.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Thanks.
For sure. In fact, I think I need to.
Yeah, you can pick up any blue, basically, that you wear. You know, any gray, any black.
Outside, yeah.
It's pretty, but, yeah, last week I was. Yes, we're gonna be here for a minute. Thank you guys. I can make sure both of you did that research. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Right, right. I thought I was gonna start coughing out of control for a second or two, because every now and then it happens, you know. And let me look for some right now.
Right, we're having tents, there'll be like
You got cough drops?
Okay, may I get one?
She's gonna take them. Yes.
Yeah. Unless it's something we're looking the other way on. I don't If you want to shoot me an email tomorrow, just
I think it was very interesting. I'm so glad she did those overlays.
Yeah.
To actually show you what it looks like. Yeah, environmental conservation area.
well, you know, nobody can see our legs. We put that little Afghan or, you know.
So, you know, sometimes we can't show
My toes are frozen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just, and they had to do, simple really about understand some of the things. I can appreciate. Excuse me, folks in the back. Folks in the back. Miss Brown. Could you guys, we're getting ready to start again. Could you, I don't want to discourage you, and if you want to stay, that's fine and dandy, but we're getting ready to start up again. All right, we're going to move on to new agenda items. The first one is item 23-08-01, conceptual site plan for, I don't want to,
Hoshizaki.
Hoshizaki expansion at 618 South Highway 74. I'll turn over to staff.
Can we get, Chris, would you mind closing those doors? Oh, good, thank you.
Mind reader.
Okay, well, now for some of that industrial growth that everybody was talking about. So, Integrated Science has brought us a site plan for a warehouse expansion, or addition, I should say, at the Hoshizaki manufacturing facility. The property is located on Highway 74, just south of TDK Boulevard. You can see the dot there, right there, outlined in blue, this large property here, located, Zone GI, General Industrial. Well, hello. There we go. All right. The proposed warehouse will be 2 levels of approximately 60,000 square foot each, which will bring the overall total on the site to 384,562 square feet. The new warehouse, which is this orange box right over here, sits just north of the existing building by about 100 feet away, and it'll be connected to the existing building with an enclosed passageway so that forklifts can travel back and forth between the two buildings. And the upper floor of this new building will be at the same level as the existing building. And the lower level is actually down below, and that's where the loading will take place, where the grade level of the property is naturally lower. So it won't be 2 stories as you're looking at it from Highway 74. It'll be on level with the existing building, and then that second level is down below. The warehouse is going to be sitting on top of where there is currently an existing parking area, and all of that parking is proposed to be relocated. The majority of that parking will go in the rear, in this new lot back here and here, and then some of it will be relocated right up here near the front entrance, which there's no parking there now, so that's a bonus. The property currently has 529 parking spaces, and the proposal is to maintain the current number of parking spaces. While that is more than is required, they're not proposing to increase or decrease the number of parking spaces, but rather to maintain what they have. There's a new circulation path being proposed right here and in front of the property that'll give trucks direct access back here to the loading area. That will eliminate some of the existing tree buffer that exists, but they are still going to be maintaining more than the 60-foot required landscape buffer, which you'll see the dashed line across the front. That's the 60-foot mark, so it'll be a little more than that. And because this property is located along a major thoroughfare, an architectural review will be required. Staff believes that the proposed plan for the expansion meets the city ordinances and recommends approval.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would you state your name and who you represent?
Yes, sir. Jason Walls with Integrated Science and Engineering, 1039 Sullivan's Road, Noonan, Georgia, representing Hoshizaki America. Since we're pushing 2 hours, I'll be very brief and just say this: if you recognize that this is a project we brought in front of you about a year ago that was approved. Flip it, the building was where the new parking is, the new parking was where the building is now, so this is the same thing, just kind of flipped for an industrial layout internal process that Laura already mentioned, so we'll be here to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Sure. I remember that because I had a problem pronouncing Hoshizaki then. As well. But anyway, all right, so let's open it up to questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Reeves, any questions for the applicant?
No questions.
Commissioner Johnson?
So 529 parks, how many employees estimated?
I believe at this facility, we're about 380, maybe, 380. Yeah, with shift work. We do expect continued growth year upon year, so this warehouse will add about 20 to 25 people just to man the warehouse.
But then we hope that, you know, with our growth plan that we'll continue to add people. So currently we use warehouses in Griffin and in Jonesboro. And we're going to bring all that back to Peachtree City, and we can house all that here and cut down on transportation. So alleviate some of the traffic problems that we have.
Okay, so the number of parks is really for future growth, just,
Yes, yeah, we'll just maintain,
for that.
just maintain what we have, but
yeah, okay. And then I have a question for staff. So it says 4 loading docks are required with 6 being proposed. So why 6, or what's the reason for the 6?
It's just what they feel they needed.
Okay.
yeah, just based on, right now, at the south end of our plant, we do shipping and receiving in the same number of docks.
Okay.
And we have 6 down there right now, but when we add on, we wanted to go ahead and add 6 with expected growth. So all the receiving will be in the new warehouse on the north end. The flow through the plant will be north to south, and shipping will stay on the south end. So everything's straight line flow through the manufacturing facility. And that's the reason we moved from the back side of the building, because our entrance was in the center of the plant in the back. So we had a lot of redundant movement within the plant. So by moving on the north end, it's a straight line flow, so.
It was just the ordinance required a minimum of 4 loading docks.
Gotcha, okay. And that's all I had, thank you.
Okay, I have no questions. Commissioner Rittenhouse.
No questions.
Commissioner Hamner.
No questions.
Commissioner Chris.
Do you feel like maintaining the current number of parking spaces to be sufficient for your plan of growth?
Yeah, I think right now, based on the number of employees, we're a little over what the ordinance is, so we have excess right now. So we'll just maintain the same number for future growth, and we won't have to add, so.
Okay, no further questions.
All right, then we'll move on to comments, and we'll start with Commissioner Reeves. Any comments?
No comments.
Commissioner Johnston.
No comments.
No comments from myself. Commissioner Rittenhouse.
No comments.
And Commissioner Hamner.
I said this last time, I'll say it again, that these are always the best plans to see. Thank you for the continued investment in Peachtree City.
And Commissioner Chris.
Echo that, no further comments.
All right, then the chair will entertain a motion for item 23-08-01, the conceptual site plan for Hosiaki expansion at 618 South Highway 74. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the conceptual site plan for Hoshizaki expansion at 618 South Highway 74, agenda item 23-08-01.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? Well, the ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Item number 23-08-02, conceptual plat for Mills Farm, 2443 Red Wine Road. We'll turn it over to staff.
This may look familiar to you.
It just,
So this is the Mill Farm subdivision. The rezoning to LUR was approved by City Council, but because they changed the setbacks, they have to come back through the plating process because setbacks are part of that plating process. So staff has reviewed the proposal against all of the ordinances as well as the conditions of LUR approval, which I've highlighted the ones that apply to this process, just to remind everybody that they were allowed or are allowed 74 lots that have to be at least 12,000 square feet each. There are minimum width requirements on each of those. That the front setback is 25 feet on all of the lots, but the side setback is 5 feet except for the lots that are adjacent to existing subdivisions. So that's these right here. That side setback is 10 feet. Same with the rear. The rear is 20 feet except for that handful of lots. It has to be 30 feet. So that is satisfied on the plat. The multi-use path connection is provided both to the north and the south. So right up there to the north and to the south, meeting all city requirements. And they have the required buffer along Red Wine. If you do remember, it did come up. The county has actually taken additional right-of-way from the property, so that technically reduced the setback on the property, or the buffer on this property, but keep in mind, the land is still there. It just is changed ownership. So, and then the last condition is that floodplains and buffers shall not be in the buildable envelope. And because it confused me, I wanted to bring it up to everybody here. Although you see floodplain buffers on these lots here, when this property is developed, those buffers will go away per the permitted, per the Corps of Engineer permit that gave them that permission. So, because I saw those buffers and I went, what the? And they rightfully corrected me and said, no, those will go away. So those will not be there on the final plat. So staff is of the opinion that the conceptual plat meets all the requirements of the city development ordinances as well as the conditions of LUR zoning, and are recommending approval.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Please step up and give us your name and who you represent.
Good evening. My name is Sean Shanks. I'm with Moorbass Consulting. I'm here on behalf of Jeff Lindsay Communities. Robin did an excellent job explaining it, so we don't have any issues with the conditions that are proposed. So I can just answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
The developer's here tonight too, in case you have any questions for him.
Sure. Let's start with Commissioner Criz. Any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Hamner.
No questions.
Commissioner Rittenhouse.
No questions.
I have no questions. Commissioner Johnson
No questions.
and Commissioner Reeves.
No questions.
Okay, then we'll move on to comments. We'll start with Commissioner Reeves.
No comments.
Commissioner Johnson.
No comments.
No comments from myself. Commissioner Rittenhouse.
No comments.
Commissioner Hamner.
Again, no comments.
And Commissioner Criz.
I have comments. So, no, I think this is a good plat, and it addresses the concerns of the citizens that came out to the council meeting and to our meeting previously, so I'm glad to see that. I do have a comment just for our commission here. I think that when we approve a plat for a development of homes, especially more than 50 homes in a subdivision, we should think about the amenities that subdivision has, right? And there are no parks in this subdivision. There's no pool, and so when people want to go out to recreate in the community, they have to leave their community, and I think that creates unnecessary traffic. So that's not what we're discussing here today, but I'd like to have us in the future consider that when we are looking at subdivisions of greater than 50 or 60 homes, because I think it's unfortunate that the closest park is a small tot lot, pretty decent way away from where this is at. But that's my only comment.
Thank you for your comments, for sure. All right, so then the chair will entertain a motion for item number 23-08-02, the conceptual plat, Mills Farm 2443 at Red Wine Road. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the conceptual plat for Mills Farms at 2443 Red Wine Road, item number 23-08-02.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, just want to make sure that we do keep in mind it to be approved with all the conditions that are
Yes.
applicable to that. Make sure that we have that.
So, do we need to amend that motion then?
Well, there were no staff recommendations. It's they apply to the zoning.
Oh, they apply to the zoning? Okay.
Right,
Okay,
right, the
that's fine.
conditions were.
So we're good then.
Got you.
Okay.
All right, very good. All right, so any other discussion on the motion? Then all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. All right, we'll move on to item 23-08-03, building elevations for Sherwin-Williams at 1110 Crosstown Court. We'll turn over to staff.
All righty. This is the Sherwin-Williams. It's going into the old Pizza Hut location at 1110 Crosstown Court. which is located at the intersection of Crosstown Court and Crosstown Drive, across from the Braylon Shopping Center. There in the blue outline. And it is zone GC for general commercial. Colors aren't great up there. Anyway, Crosstown Drive is considered a major thoroughfare, and therefore the building is required to follow the architectural standards in our ordinance. For your reference, the store entry, let me explain the site plan a little bit. This is Crosstown Drive, so the Braylon Shopping Center is over on this side, and then this is Crosstown Court, you know, it makes that loop around through like that. And the entry to the building is on this side where the number 1 is. And let me also point out, the color that you see on the buildings does not indicate the actual color of the building, but I added that so that it indicates everywhere that there's a brick on the building, just so you could see that. But you would refer to the materials there in the middle for a little bit closer indication of the colors being used. Plus, I believe there's a brick. The applicant brought a brick sample for you to look at, maybe. Okay. Okay. So the proposed color palette is neutral, as you can see there, which blends well with the natural surroundings. And as you can see, except for the roof gables and the dormer windows, we got a nice roof gables here, and this dormer windows out front, that the building is 100% brick on 3 sides with a brick base on the rear facade. So the rear facade is on this side. That would be number 3, which is this facade here. This is the front entry facade, which is number 1. This is the facade that faces Crosstown Drive, and this is the facade that number 4 right here. The front entrance is accentuated by a gabled roof with the board and batten siding over the entry doors. It has a covered area for customers and has these side windows, these clear story windows, which bring natural light into the store. The dormer windows that I mentioned up here adds visual interest and sets it apart from all the other facades. And the side that faces Crosstown Drive that we looked at is very similar to the front elevation. And the rear is board and batten siding above the brick base. And that is about it. The building meets the city's ordinances and standards and recommends approval.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Please come up and state your name and who you represent.
Hello, my name's Tom Webb. I'm the developer and the owner. This is my son Jackson. This will be the 53rd Sherwin-Williams we developed and built. And this color sample is just more or less their version. The last 5 years, they kind of changed their overall looks, just more neutral earth tone colors, brick samples, and stuff like that. The softer tan and dapper tan is the color combination they use really for the last 5 years. Pretty exciting, I know. You can go on up there and get her.
Commissioners, we'll open it up for,
No, I really don't want to.
we'll open it up for questions for Mr. Webb if there are any, and we'll start with Commissioner Reeves. Any questions?
Yes. So how many did you say you had built?
This will be our 53rd.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Johnson?
So, the sign, it won't be visible from the road, it will be on the other side? Or will there be any signage from Crosstown, like if you're going by, will you know?
Well, okay, if you'll point to the number 1, the sign that you see there will be the number 1 entrance, that sign would be what she has listed right there as the number 1, which is really Crosstown Court the way it just circles around. So even though the main entrance looks like it faces Crosstown Drive, the really true entrance to the store faces Crosstown Court.
Kind of like the Pizza Hut was.
Exactly. It's really the exact same thing.
And keep in mind, the approval of the elevation is separate from sign. They'll have to come back for a separate
Yes.
sign permit.
Okay, okay. I was just thinking it'd be good to be.
But that's where
visible.
they'll end up putting the sign.
Oh, okay,
Exactly.
okay. And then, so without a whole picture, is this a totally different color scheme than the one on 74? Just so it matches? with-
Slightly different, yes, ma'am.
And is that just so it will,
Well,
just mesh with this
174
area, or-
built prior to them changing colors, but
Gotcha.
if you looked at them on a swatch, chances are you wouldn't know the difference.
Okay. And then just really, I'm just curious, so there are dormers, but is there an upstairs?
No, ma'am.
Or is that, okay.
No, ma'am.
That's just for looks.
Just
Okay.
for visuals, yes, ma'am.
That's all I had.
Sure. Commissioner Reno,
No questions.
Commissioner Hamner,
No questions.
Commissioner Chris,
No questions.
and I have no questions. So we'll open up for comments. Commissioner Chris,
Looks great. Glad to see the development.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hamner,
Looks really good. Looking forward to your 53rd.
Commissioner Rittenhour,
Ditto.
and ditto for myself and Commissioner Johnston.
Yes, excited, just down the road from us. We don't have to go across town to get paid now.
There you go.
Yay.
Commissioner Reeves.
No comments. Thanks.
All right, very good. So the chair will entertain a motion for item number 23-08-03, building elevations for Sherwin-Williams at 1110 Crosstown Court. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve 230803, building elevations, Sherman-Williams, 1110 Crosstown Court.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion on the motion? Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
And the last item on the agenda tonight will be item 23-08-04, building elevations, warehouse, 782 South Highway 74. Turn it over to staff.
All right, so Davis Building Company has brought us some elevations for the new warehouse to be located on Highway 74 South. It's located across the road from Cooper Lighting, here in the yellow outline, zoned GI for general industrial. The design proposal is for a mix of brick, ephes, and metal siding with a color palette of white, gray, and a dark brick. Per the architectural guidelines in our ordinance, blank walls that can be seen from the street shall have distinctive changes in the building facade, such as offsets or change in materials. The proposed design of the front facade includes emphasis on the building entry with a brick surround. This is the building entry right here, this facade that faces Highway 74. It has ground level windows next to the door and some ground level windows out over here to the side. I assume maybe that's some offices or something out front. And has a canopy over the front entry, which gives that whole area sort of gives that space a human scale. The remainder of the facade is broken up into 25-foot sections that alternate materials between the dark brick and white ephes, and high windows accent the ephes sections. Continuing to the sides, this is one of the side elevations down here, and I'll show you in a minute. The other side looks almost identical. The brick wraps around the corners right here for about 30 feet. It also wraps around the other corner. And then beyond the brick wrap, the materials alternates from between vertical and horizontal metal siding in two different colors, a white and a gray. And it also has a 3-foot brick base along the full length of the side facades. In a dark brick color called Midnight Mist. And here's the other side. Other side looks very similar. There's the brick wrap and then the alternating vertical and horizontal siding. finally, the rear facade is an all-white metal siding at the top picture there. Per our ordinance, as a general rule, front facades should be at least 80% brick or stone, and sides at least 50% brick or stone. There's no general rule for rear facades. The proposed warehouse is 57% brick on the front and 20% brick on each side. Per the design guidelines, all structures shall be unobtrusive and blend harmoniously with the natural surroundings. Section 728 of our land development ordinance states that facade colors should be low reflectance and subtle, neutral, or earth tone colors. Should the Planning Commission approve the elevation, staff recommends that the applicant work with the Planning Department to select an alternative color for white that has a lower reflectance, such as an off-white or an ivory or maybe gray. The land development ordinance also lists building materials that should not be used on the exterior of a building exposed to public view. Before I continue, I just wanted to point out what some of the adjacent properties are. The parcel on the south of the building, the proposed building, which is over here, is that air traffic control facility, which is not open to the public, and it also has a substantial buffer of trees along the side property line right here. On the other side, on the north side, there's another large industrial building. And then in the rear of the subject parcel, there's another, it backs up to the rear of another industrial property. So back to that statement in the ordinance about materials that shouldn't be used in public view, it goes on to say that a metal building without a masonry base should not be used on a facade exposed to public view. So the proposed warehouse does have a brick base down the full length of both sides, plus it has the brick wraparound of each of the front corners. And the rear does not have a brick base, but staff feels the rear is not exposed to public view per se, since it backs up to the rear sort of loading area of another industrial property. So we do feel that it is meeting that requirement, that it has the brick base where it's going to be in public view. That same section of the ordinance also mentions for materials not to be used of a mill finish or a non-colored aluminum metal windows or door frames on facades exposed to public view. For this proposal, the front windows and doors to the warehouse are proposed to be clear anodized aluminum, which means they'll have a clear finish that makes them more durable, but they will not have color. Should the Planning Commission approve the elevations, staff is recommending that the front windows and door be painted to match the canopy. So the applicant does address the shall statement in the ordinance of not having a blank wall facing a street, and the proposal calls for a brick wrap and a base for the metal siding where the building may be seen by the public on the side facades. However, the proposal does not satisfy all the should statements in the ordinance, and the proposed color does not blend with the natural surroundings, the white being more of high reflectant color. Therefore, approval or denial of agenda item 23-0804 is at the discretion of the Planning Commission. Should the Planning Commission approve the building elevation, staff recommends the following conditions be considered for adoption. As I mentioned, the applicant shall work with staff to select an alternate color for white that has a low reflectance, such as off-white, ivory, or gray. And 2, the windows and doors on the front facade shall be painted to match the entrance canopy.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here? Please give us your name and who you represent.
We're actually co-applicants. My name is John Tiernan. I'm the developer. This is, go ahead, Peter.
My name is Peter Pfeiffer, and yeah, we're looking forward for this big opportunity to growth here in Peachtree City and attract some labor and do some manufacturing.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to point it out. This is not actually a warehouse. It's a manufacturing facility. It's going to be the headquarters for SP Meditech, a Danish company, and they are a clean manufacturer, and they manufacture medical devices as well, injection molded parts and rotary molded parts and things of the like. They make coated catheters that are used in surgeries. They make wind turbine blades. So this is a great company that we should be welcoming to Peachtree City. So.
All right, thank you. We'll open it up for questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Reeves,
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
So question for staff, does the change to like manufacturing facility from warehouse, does that have any bearing on anything, any impact on?
Not on the elevation. No,
Okay,
ma'am.
thanks. That's all I have.
So I have a question relative to you not meeting what, our should statements, 80%, and 50%, and you didn't, you're nowhere near close to that. Did you understand that while it's not required, but that's what we like to see? And if you did, or why did you decide to come in with percentages that were less than that?
That's actually my doing. Maybe could we go back to the, yeah. I just thought, honestly, that mixing the top of the parapet, having the steps up and down, and mixing the material would give the building more interest. There are several buildings up and down Highway 74 that are finished in like a concrete panel, and this is a similar finish. It's more of an industrial look, and I think it's a good look. So that's rather than having an entire facade of brick. I mean, we're not completely opposed to it, but that was just our preference as owner.
Well, I would just say from a historical look at things, this commission has always kind of wanted applicants to stick as close as possible to that standard. And I just want to I'm noting, I asked you the question, and we're really not in the comment section, but I just, again, just so you know, we've held a lot of folks to that standard, or try to get them as close as possible, because we want buildings to look a certain way, particularly on 7454. So again, you answered my question, which is what I wanted to know. But I also wanted you to know that this body has held a lot of folks to that standard. So let me move on and see if there are questions from Commissioner Rittenhouse.
And I think that kind of just flows right into the question I had. And I think the chairman mentioned it the best. We've tried to have developers, kind of stick to as close to the ordinances, the color schemes, the materials, unless there is a reason why they want to move away from that. And my question is, the color scheme, I don't think it looks bad at all. I think it's very clean look to it. But same thing, is there a reason why you decided not to stick with the earth tones?
As far as the staff recommendations on colors, we have no problem with that. Working with staff on like an off-white and changing the window color, that's no issue with those recommendations at all. Happy to do that.
Commissioner Hamner?
No questions.
Commissioner Kriz?
Yeah, so glad to hear that you have no problem with working with staff on the color. I think that's probably something that should be worked on. Do you have any objection to adding a footer in brick to the back of the building, even though it won't be seen by the public, according to staff?
I guess, I'm happy to do that if you want to do that. I'd really like to spend the money where you're going to have the biggest impact. So there won't be any general public in the back of the building. We could add additional brick and additional water table in the front. I'm flexible to see that you guys are happy with the finished product here. So I would, you know, if it needs to be in the back, if we want to do that, that's essentially a loading dock wall, and above it is the metal building in the back.
Yeah, no further questions.
All right. We'll move on to comments. We'll start with Commissioner Reeves. Any comments?
No comments.
Commissioner Johnson?
No comments.
My comments would be that this building, it doesn't do a lot for me. It doesn't pop for me when I'm riding down 74 and I look at other buildings in the front of their buildings, even whether they're industrial or manufacturing. It seems, to me, it looks like it's really missing something to catch the eye as you're riding down 74 looking at the front of this. It looks, it just doesn't pop for me, and that's just me. I'm familiar with that area, and I ride down 74 every day, and there are a lot of nice-looking buildings on 74 that are of this type, and I think this is, this is for me. It didn't do it for me, but again, that's just me. I'm just giving you my comments. I think it could be beautified in some other kinds of ways, but that's just where I'm at with. So that's where I'm at with my comments relative to the look of the buildings. I'll move on to Commissioner Rittenhour.
Yeah, and I think what I'd like to see, is trying to move back to the earth tones as many of the other buildings are. Again, it's not that I'm opposed to the color, but just going with our ordinances, in this area, I'd like to see, can you replace the grays with something more of an earth tone? Go, like you said, with more of an off-white and ivory for the middle sections. I'd like to see us move back to that instead of away from that. And if there's anything, the last thing we want to have you do, first of all, welcome to Peachtree City is, well, we want you to go ahead and spend a lot of extra money to put a bunch of things on your building. But I think really what we want to try to do is move it back so we are more in line with those color schemes that we've had, and we've held other developers and businesses too over the years, and not move away really from that. So.
Well, and as I said, we're happy to work with staff on the colors, just getting them right.
Yep, I think that's good. Thank you.
I believe they brought some brick samples too, if you wanted to look at them.
Well, commissioners, we have obviously three options. We can vote it yes, or we can vote it no. We can table it until a later time. Again, it's up to you. I will entertain a motion.
I think we still had some comments.
Oh, did it? I didn't get to you. I'm sorry. Commissioner Hammond. I was jumping forward. Pardon me.
It's okay. It's almost 9.
It's getting late. It's getting late.
No, I mean, I'll say this. I like the building, but to what the other two commissioners before my comment said, I do agree that we do need to stay in line with the other colors. I'm really glad to hear you guys are open to doing that, and I think we'll be able to solve it pretty quick once that's done.
Commissioner Quiz.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled about the investment in Peachtree City. I think it's fantastic to see more industrial facilities here, manufacturing facilities. I agree with the chair. I just don't think that this building does a lot for me. Front's fine. I think the sides in the back are really, really plain. And I just don't think that's what we have here in Peachtree City. But overall, I think it's a great development for the city, and I'm pleased to have you guys here.
All right, well then let's hear a motion. The chair will entertain a motion for item 23-08-04, building elevations warehouse at 782 South Highway 74.
I make a motion that we approve the building elevations for the manufacturing facility at 782 South Highway 74, item number 23-08-04, with the condition that they will work with staff on the color schemes as requested.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
So the motion does pass three to two.
Yep.
Motion carries 3-2.
I was just checking to make sure that we had a representative, because what we'll do is, we'll work with a color scheme, but we will
Oh.
definitely bring it back to the planning commission representative for sort of that final approval, so that it's not just us.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know if we have one for this or not.
All right, so. the
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Our next meeting?
September 11th.
September.
September
And we do-
11th.
We do have 2 public hearings on that meeting.
I will be out of town.
You know what, I'm gonna be out of
On-
town also, on
on-
September 11th.
On September 11th?
I'm coming back that
The
day, but I
public
don't think I
hearings.
get back until the evening.
Okay.
Late afternoon or early evening.
Okay, if you all would look at your schedule, the rest of you, make sure that we can
Yeah,
have a
'cause-
quorum. One of them is there's some rezoning. We've had a lot come in recently,
Okay.
variances and all kinds of things. So I do believe the September 11th is the rezoning on 54. There's some older single-family homes that had been sort of a chiropractor's office. They'd
Yeah.
like to raise those and develop it into a commercial lot for a car wash. And then the short-term rental ordinance is supposed to be that public hearing.
Okay,
Okay.
very good. Anything else for the good of the order?
Well, in case we don't have somebody for this one, do we want to go ahead and pick somebody?
Say it again?
Mr. Hamner, in case, we didn't bring our development status
Oh,
report
okay,
with us to
gotcha,
double check to make sure that we had one of you assigned to this property. So if there isn't one already,
I don't think we do, actually. No, we don't.
oh, perfect. Looks like you're our lucky winner, Mr. Hamner.
Sure. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Then we stand adjourned.